GearNetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I believe it's a big challenge for our building to keep things in perspective and to, if we're going to get addicted to anything, let's get addicted to the process.
And with that, we welcome you to Trust the Podcast, powered by Better Live Than Dead and the Gear Radio Network. This here is episode 136. For those counting at home, that's 136. It's the Buffalo Bills at the New England Patriots, and before we get too far in depth here, as you can maybe tell by now, I have been left to my own devices on this very divisive episode of Trust the Podcast. So before we get too crazy here, you can hear us on BetterLiveThanDead.com, GearNetwork.com, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. Make sure to hit that subscribe button as well to stay up to date on the latest podcast. Obviously, I am Ryan Wolfe. Unfortunately, John had some scheduling conflicts, and with the Buffalo Bills playing on Thursday, it's obviously incredibly important for us to get the latest Trust the Podcast out to you as soon as possible. Now, recap here, Buffalo. They do Buffalo things, man. They score late, which was fantastic. They almost, again, for the second week in a row, snatched victory from the sure jaws of defeat. But the Buffalo Bills allow Mac Jones to roll down the field and score a game-winning touchdown with seconds to go. It goes in the books as Bill Belichick's 300th career win, whoop-de-doo. Who gives a rat's ass? I put that specifically there for John because I know John loves it when I'm spicy, when the Bills either lose or don't do good. So for all of you out there who may be New England Patriots fans and you're celebrating today, popping your, I don't know, whatever you pop, your, I don't know, who cares? Don't get it twisted. Bill Belichick is 45-49 in his career without in New England without Tom Brady under center. So it's pretty cool that you had Tom Brady. But turns out that maybe the quarterback makes the coach and not vice versa. Also, want to point out, because again, I am feeling a little urge to just kind of twist the knife backward, because obviously today, you know, all the Patriots fans have been talking about how the Buffalo Bills are overrated. They're not going to make the playoffs, etc., whatever. Counting the playoffs, the record for most career losses belongs to Tom Landry, who has lost a total of 178 regular and postseason games combined in his coaching career. Belichick has lost 170 total, so with 9 more losses, he'll be the losingest coach in the history of the National Football League, and I will take that completely because, if nothing else, at heart, I am a petty little bitch, and I will be the first to admit that on my own podcast. So don't try to call me something I already know that I am. So for the third straight game, the Buffalo Bills start out completely flat, lose their second game in 3 weeks. While Buffalo scored 22 points in the second half, the inability to slow down the much-maligned New England Patriots offense was the final nail in the coffin. A 4-3 start for the Buffalo Bills is an absolute embarrassment for a team and for a franchise who many had going to and potentially winning the Super Bowl heading into the season. If there's one thing this Buffalo Bills franchise loves to do, it's certainly not live up to expectations. We've seen that one for quite some time now. Not to mention, they lose to a 1-4 New England Patriots team now, or 1-5. I'm sorry, they were even worse than that. They had fans calling for Bill Belichick to be fired. And again, we do understand that injuries do change expectations. The Buffalo Bills lost some incredible talent this year so far. They've lost Tre'Davious White, they've lost Matt Milano, they've lost Daquan Jones, who, I may add, very underrated, now maybe properly rated that he's out of the lineup. Have the Bills adjusted to those injuries, though? That certainly does not appear to be the case. Now, granted, it could just be me. I'm here by myself. Trust the Podcast on the Gear Radio Network. In my humble expert opinion, I don't believe so. Now, mind you, injuries bring up depth. And depth has been a problem for the Buffalo Bills. Now, granted, going into the season, you certainly could not have predicted that you would be down so many talented players so early on in the season. I mean, they have so much money on the injured reserve, so much talent on the injured reserve for players who we probably won't see until next season. But that begs the question, though. Well, who can pick up the slack? And funny you should ask that question. Offensively, Josh Allen. He can pick up the team. He can be unleashed. He can be let go to lead this team on a run. We've seen it before multiple times. But the problem here is that, again, they're showing up flat. 3 games in a row. The first game, the excuse was valid, jet lag. You're in London for 50 hours, roughly. You show up to play a game. Fantastic. You don't show up well. You have some devastating injuries with, again, they lost Milano and Daquan Jones in that game. Okay, I understand that. The last 2 weeks, they've attempted to pull rabbits out of a hat. Last week, they did successfully, thanks to a very well-timed pass interference call, or decision to take a pass interference. But this week, they were not so lucky. Because, again, they all they needed to do was hold New England to a field goal attempt. Send it to overtime. Put your offense back on the field, and the defense not only bent, they shattered. They completely shattered under the expectation of all we got to do is hold them to a field goal. Now, offensively, Josh Allen appears to be on some sort of strict offensive orders. First off, he's running the ball a lot less, as we talked last week. There were some plays on Sunday. Josh normally rolls out, would run the ball for 7, 8, 9 yards, slide, be perfectly fine. He's rolling out, and nothing's happening. He's just waiting for something to happen and doesn't run with the ball. It's clear. We've obviously had the golden retriever references in the past about Josh being the football version of Air Bud. And it definitely looks like someone had that leash on him this week and was just kind of making sure he stayed behind the line. Now, I don't know if it's because they're specifically trying to keep him healthy as possible for the playoffs. Obviously, he has a shoulder injury where he did not look himself for most of the game. Deep passes were either overthrown or just not on target. And that's not normal for Josh Allen, that we know. That would be normal for rookie Josh Allen or second-year Josh Allen, but not recently. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. I mean, the thing about it, though, is that at the start of the season, you'd say, yeah, you want to keep Josh Allen healthy for the playoffs. But right now, you got to make the playoffs to have a chance for Josh Allen to be healthy for the playoffs. And at this point, I mean, we know Miami lost on Sunday night. Some people will say it's the only good team that the Dolphins have played this year, but let's be honest. The Bills are a good team. They're just underperforming. The Eagles put on tape again how to beat the Miami Dolphins. We talked about it last week. The Dolphins combined wins, or the Dolphins wins, their opponents had a combined wins or combined win record of like 9-26 or something like that. It was absolutely atrocious. So they score a lot on bad teams. They play good teams. They don't do as well. It's a surprise. I can't believe it's actually happening, but this is how things work out. But I still think at this point the division needs to be out of the question. Like, focus on week to week and see what happens. Because right now, spoiler alert, even though the Bills have played awful the past 3 weeks, things are still looking up for them. But again, they have to change their focus. And those changes start with Sean McDermott. Is he capable of making the important changes? I find myself questioning this each and every single week. He said post-game, quote, "We have to find why we're stubbing our toe." I don't think it's as little bit of a pain as a stub toe. It's more than that. Because again, the expectations, the pressure, the weight of, hey, you could be wasting a season of Von Miller, of Stephon Diggs, of Josh Allen, of insert player name here. And with the Bills being an older team in certain aspects, like, yeah, the pressure's on. You should have tried to win with Josh Allen before his first contract kicked in. You didn't, so now you kind of have to get a little more creative. But Maybe they make the changes, though, and the ship rights itself. But as we've seen in the past, Leslie Frazier being one of them, Sean McDermott continuing to be one of them, this coaching staff has proven to be headstrong and stuck on their ways. If you don't believe me, go see 13 Seconds versus Kansas City. If you're unwilling to make the appropriate adjustments and put your best foot forward and swallow your pride, if you're not willing to do that, you're not going to win football games. Now, I know I have made myself very known as to how I feel about Sean McDermott, how I feel about this coaching staff. And the pressure, don't get me wrong, the pressure's on him this season because he's running the defense. He's allowing Ken Dorsey to run the offense by himself. He said, the decisions kind of go through Sean, but Ken Dorsey's the guy, for better or for worse. And the more you look at it, you see the weird interaction between Brian Daboll and Sean McDermott. You heard rumblings of maybe there's some like a fox in the hen house, if you will, situation where it seems like there is a comfortability when Sean McDermott has complete control. Understandably so. This is just me drawing a conclusion from what I've seen. And I would have to think that Sean McDermott feels pretty comfortable because what are the Bills going to do? Fire him and make Ken Dorsey the head coach? Yeah, not happening. So again, it's pretty comfortable right there. But at some point in time, you have to put your best foot forward. You have to do what's best for the franchise. And maybe what's best for the franchise is not what's best for you individually, but that's too bad. You're part of a team. Now, Brother Bill, at Brother Bill 716, had a great tweet. He said, McDermott is the kind of coach that can take a bottom 5 roster to the wild card, but he's also the kind of coach who will take a top 5 roster to the wild card. I feel like that is a very good summation of how a lot of fans feel in Buffalo. Most simply because there is so much talent on both sides of the ball in Buffalo, and this is what you get so far. Is question marks, is... Granted, don't get me wrong, every team struggles. It's a very long season, 18 weeks, 17 games. I mean, you're starting in July all the way through to February if you make the Super Bowl. It's a long season. It's arduous. It's painful. It's difficult, mentally, physically taxing. I get it. But you're professionals. You've been doing this long enough. It's not an accident that Sean McDermott has developed into a very good coach for the Buffalo Bills. But it seems like when the Bills go to make that next step, Sean McDermott is, I guess, left holding the door open, and we're all wondering what the hell just happened. Now, a good point from another friend of the pod, Victoria, at DirtbagQueer on Twitter, she points out, nothing about the way the Bills have been bad this year are new or exciting or different. It looks like the slow decay of a team that missed their window, has bloated contracts and questionable depth. Putting that loss on coaching is preposterous to me. The backups just got beat. Look who was on the field on the last drive. Kingsley Jonathan and Kendall Vickers are receiving load-bearing snaps right now. 3 safeties are on the field. How often do you see them play dime? They're hurt. They don't have the dudes. When you have an old team, it happens. Now, I don't disagree with that either. And I know this has kind of become more of like a, hey, it's late night with the pizza man, and I'm giving you kind of my opening monologue. But here's the thing. When I'm by myself, I'm talking to myself. I'm sitting down here in my office, the cat condo, is what we call it here at the Wolf Den Studios, hanging out, looking at the Trust the Podcast outline, and talking about the Buffalo Bills. I think at the end of the day, I mean, every team has an identity. Through 7 weeks, the only identity this team has is holding under pressure, man. And I don't know how it changes. I mean, they've got a couple layups coming up, but at some point in time, we saw it a few years ago where the Buffalo Bills were a tale of two halves. One half, they'd be awful. The second half, they'd be world beaters. That is not going to work in the NFL, especially this year where defenses appear to be better. Now, we've seen a continued trend of offense, but this year it seems like defenses are kind of starting to maybe not completely turn the tide, but there's a little more pressure coming from those defenses than we saw in the past. It's no longer run and gun, putting up 75 points combined a game. You're getting games like Sunday Night Football where you're like, man, these two teams could really break the top off of it, but it ends up being 24-17, or you get a 20-10, or a 14-13 game. Like it's nothing. Excuse me. Not as exciting as it once was, and I think that's because defenses are stepping up. So naturally, the 1 year the Buffalo Bills defense takes a step back due to injuries and potentially ineffectiveness. I mean, look at a guy like Jordan Poyer. He just doesn't look like himself out there. He's made some plays, don't get me wrong, but he just sometimes doesn't look like the Jordan Poyer of old. It happens. Guys get old. Guys start to age out of the league. Is that the case? I mean, that's the only true answer I can come up with right now. But again, at this point, to wrap up this TED Talk here, I think I speak for many Bills fans when I say that I am capital F fucking frustrated with this franchise at this point. It's just another week, another lost week, in another lost season, in another lost decade is what it feels like. Again, maybe jumping the gun on this one. And this is where John would tell me, take a breath, chill out. And that's what I'm trying to do. Take a breath, chill out. Because I told John this once, and I will paraphrase here, is that essentially nothing is forever, right? So you can't take this with you. You can't take the Bills fandom with you. So hey, as long the Bills may lose, but you wake up the next day, you're happy, you're healthy, you go to work, you got a beautiful family, whatever. Everything's perfectly fine. The Bills losing bothers me for maybe 15, 20 minutes, and most of that bother is me sitting here thinking, well, how am I going to talk to the people who listen to the podcast? How am I going to talk to those Trust the Podcast listeners who tune in each and every single week? What am I thinking as an objective observer? I can't talk apparently here. What is the point that I'm trying to get across? What am I? It's not really, I mean, it's what I think, so it is my personal narrative. I get that. But it's more about trying to be logical and say, hey, look it. Maybe Sean McDermott is an idiot. But that's not what I'm focused on right now. I'm focused on where the hell is Dawson Knox been in the offense? Dalton Kincaid, we'll talk about him in a few minutes. He looked great. Gabe Davis caught one ball for a number 2 wide receiver who's going to be a free agent after the year. That's not the kind of performance I'm looking for. So is it a personnel problem? Is it a scheming problem? Is it a coaching problem? Is it an execution problem? For a team that was expected to be in the Super Bowl by many coming into this season, it's October 23rd at the time of the recording here. Those are not the kinds of questions you want to be asking yourself on October 23rd after 7 games into an NFL season is, hey, why are they sputtering? Now, mind you, the Bills have done this before. They've struggled before. They're 4-3. There's a long season ahead of them. But the tide feels like it's starting to turn a bit. So again, we will continue to keep an eye on it as we move forward here on Trust the Podcast. We're going to move over to our 3 big things here in just a minute. Brought to you by puckluck.com, your one-stop resource for all your National Hockey League sports betting action. Thank God for the Buffalo Sabres to just be able to distract us from whatever's happening to the Buffalo Bills. And you can use Puckluck to distract yourself as well because it is fantastic. Puckluck provides win percentages and score projections for each and every National Hockey League game to tilt the ice in your favor. Not sure what to bet or just in a rut? Not to worry. Puckluck also provides expert picks to get the puck bouncing your way. Please note, though, puckluck.com, no way affiliated with the National Hockey League, its teams, or the NHLPA. Puckluck.com provides data related to gambling and cannot guarantee the success of any suggested or related wagers. As always, please gamble responsibly. And as always, the first of our 3 big things here this week, dissecting the offense. And before I go too far, I also want to apologize if my voice starts to lose some luster or break or crack or whatever. I don't know what's going on, but apparently something along the lines of like a laryngitis or just a common cold. I don't know. I've got an almost 2-year-old, and the germs are real, my friends. Anybody out there can probably confirm that. But back to the Bills. Quarterback Josh Allen, 27 of 41 passing, 265 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception with 17 carries for 17 yards and a touchdown. Wide receiver Stephon Diggs, 6 receptions on 12 targets for 58 yards and a touchdown. As always, it's death, taxes, and Diggs. He had an incredible touchdown where he slid to make the catch, stood up quick enough, spun around, did not get touched when he was on the ground, ran in for a touchdown. You'll be seeing that one on highlight reels for many moons to come here. Tight end Dalton Kincaid, 8 receptions and 8 targets for 75 yards. I jokingly say this, but I really mean it. Nice to see that the first-round pick has a pulse. The Buffalo Bills offense has not found a very effective way to integrate him into the offense. I mean, the whole point was to get Dalton Kincaid in 12 personnel, so that way you could have both him and Knox on the field at the same time, and then Kincaid is essentially like an extra big-bodied wide receiver. So we'll see how that continues to develop as the year goes on here, but right now, a good Sunday for Dalton Kincaid. Speaking of a good Sunday here, James Cook, running back, 13 carries for 56 yards, with 3 receptions on 3 targets for 46 yards and a touchdown. It turns out when you put the ball, in James Cook's hands, good things tend to happen. The offense tends to flow much better than it does without him. I mean, there were a couple questionable calls of running on specific downs, specific types of runs and stuff like that. But again, that kind of goes towards the overall conversation of what are we trying to accomplish here. Now, putting a ball in the O, the only really thing I have here, spreading it out. Allen completed 27 passes to 9 different receivers. Obviously, Kincaid, Diggs, and Cook, as we talked about. Khalil Shakir, Latavius Murray, Dawson Knox, Deontay Hardy, Gabe Davis, and Trent Sherfield all had at least a catch on Sunday. Now, breaking down the defense, and another thing, too, with it being just myself, not going to sit here and wax poetic aside from, obviously, the opening monologue there that, if you're still sticking around, I appreciate you. But moving on to our second of the 3 big things here, breaking down the defense, linebacker Terrell Bernard, 11 tackles, 9 solo. He had 1 tackle for a loss with a fumble recovery. Safety Jordan Poyer, 10 tackles, 5 solo, 1 sack, 1 tackle for a loss, 2 quarterback hits with 1 forced fumble. Now, the defense hung on by a thread. They were unable to get consistent pressure on New England quarterback Mac Jones. Only 4 total quarterback hits. I know that they've been getting sacks on quarterbacks, but it feels like, and maybe I'm just kind of barking up the wrong tree on this one, but it feels like if the Bills aren't getting a sack, there's just no pressure on the quarterback. And Mac Jones on Sunday, 272 passing yards with 2 passing touchdowns. Again, for a guy who struggled most of the season, not good. Not good to be the team that allows that to happen, because just leaves a bad taste in your mouth, especially when it is the New England Patriots. Also, kicker Tyler Bass missed another field goal on Sunday. Nothing currently going right for this team. I know that there were some swirls and some crazy wins in Gillette Stadium with their new setup, but ultimately, I don't know what happened on that kick. It was something else for sure. But with that being said, as you know, we will take a commercial break. We'll be back right after these messages with more Trust the Podcast on the Gear Radio Network. And we are back here on Trust the Podcast. Ryan Wolfe joining you, running, flying solo here today. Wrapping up Week 6 around the NFL, always brought to you by Go Frost Yourself. Go Frost Yourself, located in Rochester, New York, does what other local bakeries do not. They bake from scratch, creating recipes themselves and using the best fresh ingredients they can find to create delicious flavors for customers daily. Molly and Jen, hi Molly and Jen, they have worked tirelessly to create what Go Frost Yourself has become today, and their passion can be tasted in the items that they bake. When you find yourself looking for an item for a special occasion, or maybe you just want to try their incredible cinnamon rolls, if you're local, you can visit Go Frost Yourself storefront at 2544 Ridgeway Ave, or you can always visit them online at gofrostyourself.com. Now, there's a new quarterback in the Windy City this week. Rookie quarterback Tyson Bagent had a 30-12 victory over the Las Vegas Raiders, becoming the first Bears quarterback to win his first career start since Craig Krenzel accomplished the feat in 2004. And Bagent is the first undrafted quarterback since at least 1950 to start in his rookie season after playing the season prior in D2. Bagent is one of 6 players to play in the NFL that have played for the D2 Shepherd Rams out of Shepherdstown, West Virginia. He played from 2018 to 2022. He owns school records for passing yards for 17,304, passing touchdowns 159, total touchdowns 171, and completions 1,400. In 2021, he won the Harlan Hill Trophy, the D2 equivalent of the Heisman Trophy, and he's been nominated 3 other times. Now, this is the fun part here that I know John would get a kick out of. His father, Travis Bajent, the Beast is his nickname. He's a 28-time arm wrestling champion, won championships with both arms, claims to be one of the best ever in the sport. Now, the number of championships he's won, it's different depending on who you talk to. Either way, this man is an arm wrestling master. He once said, quote, "It's like the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks with Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, and then you figure out the other two." In arm wrestling, I'm one of those first 2 guys in that Mount Rushmore. This guy's dad, Travis the Beast, is the Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, self-appointed, but again, the cards don't lie. He is the self-appointed Tom Brady or Peyton Manning of arm wrestling. And it should come as no surprise, ladies and gentlemen, his occupation is a CrossFit gym owner. So that man is intense. There's a great video circling the web, saw it on TikTok, of him arm wrestling Tom Pelissero a while back. Absolutely incredible stuff. Speaking of absolutely incredible, Cleveland survives in Indianapolis, aided by 2 questionable penalties against the Colts on back-to-back plays. The Browns extended their record to 4-2 with a thrilling 39-38 victory over the Colts. Noted sexual assaulter and Cleveland Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson, not sure why it was so hard to say Cleveland there, returned to the lineup for the first time since September 24th, but left after a big hit in the first quarter. Watson was cleared to return after suffering a head injury, but Coach Kevin Stefanski did not feel it was necessary to put Watson at further risk. And either way, Cleveland comes out on top, moves to 4-2 on the season. Also, Baltimore serves up a hot piece of humble pie. Detroit's feel-good 5-1 start came to a screeching halt on Sunday afternoon thanks to a 38-6 drubbing at the hands of the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore quarterback Lamar Jackson, looking like MVP quarterback Lamar Jackson of a few years ago. 21 of 27 passing, 357 passing yards, 3 touchdowns with 9 rushes for 36 yards and 1 touchdown. Now, our look ahead, wrapping this bad boy up before I lose my voice. I'm starting it now because, John, I was trying to wait until Halloween. I really was, buddy. If the Bills had won on Sunday, I would not have said a thing. But let me clear the throat on this one. Ladies and gentlemen, if the season ended today, please note, we know that the season does not end today, but if the season did end today, this is what would happen. The Buffalo Bills would be 7th in the AFC, barely making the playoffs. They would play the Dolphins in Miami in the wild card round. Now, this is important because even though it's been the terrible, horrible, no good football season for these Buffalo Bills, they are still in a playoff spot. They still have a lot of important football left to play. I find myself dogging on this team because, again, I don't want to see them lose. I watched the Buffalo Bills lose personally from the Music City Miracle until the time Josh Allen showed up. I mean, aside from the year where, Tyrod Taylor got them to the playoffs, God rest his body. Take care of him. He is a saint. I just acted like he was dead, but he's not dead. He's a starting quarterback in the New York Giants. But I've been through a lot. These fans have been through a lot. Listeners have been through a lot. So I'm not selfish when I say this, that 7th seed in the AFC, it's the playoffs. It's, it's like a tie. Like they say, like a tie is like kissing your sister. Something like that here. I don't know. You come up with something, let me know, and I'll start saying it. But Week 8, the Buffalo Bills versus Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bills are back home at Highmark Stadium. Kickoff, 8:15 p.m. on Thursday on Prime Video. Not sure if they're going to be showing it locally, but again, if you have Amazon Prime, which I feel like everybody does at this point, they have their clutches on us. Amazon, our overlords. Go on Prime Video, watch the game. Tampa Bay, 3-3, second in the NFC South, coming off a 16-13 loss to Atlanta on Sunday. They've lost 2 straight games. They've scored 103 points, allowed 104 points. The feel-good story here, quarterback Baker Mayfield, who had a career resurgence last season with the Los Angeles Rams, parlayed that into a job starting with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was signed in the offseason, went head-to-head with Kyle Trask, won the job, has performed relatively well. 65.4 completion percentage, 1,088 passing yards, 7 touches, and 3 picks. But ESPN's matchup predictor has 82.7% of America believing Buffalo will defeat Tampa Bay. I have to imagine Buffalo coming off just a horrible loss to the New England Patriots, as I talked about at length earlier. Have to think the Buffalo Bills are going to take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and handle them. I wouldn't say with relative ease, but at the end of the game, there are no points for big wins or close wins or close losses. It's either 1-0 or 0-1 or 0-0-1 if you manage to tie, but I don't want to cross that bridge yet because my head might explode. But with that being said, John would play the cue now. No one circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. Those fans are insane, intense. They're going to be loud on Thursday night. Something about playing football under the lights at Highmark Stadium and Orchard Park just hits differently. Let's go, Buffalo. Come on. Let's go. Have a great time. Be safe. Enjoy yourself. Let's get a good football game and get the season back on track. For Trust the Podcast, I am Ryan Wolfe. As always, we are Trust the Podcast and you are not. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, go Bills.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.